Hello, my name is Yvonne. My podcast is JK Lifestyles with Yvonne. And today we have Kamini Wood joining us. I wanted her to come on. Useful information I'm always a fan of, but she's a mother of five. She's an international best-selling author. She's a certified coach for teens and adults. She's board certified through the American Association of Drugless Practioners, and she's the founder and CEO of Live Joy Your Way and the AuthenticMe RiseUp program. How are you today?
I am very well, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Could you tell me a little bit about what your organization does? The one that you
Yes, so my Live Joy Your Way is the name of my business, and essentially it's a practice that I work with people one-to-one. I coach individuals on understanding what their own human potential is, and what I mean by that is really working on understanding who they are at their foundation through values and needs, because so often we are driven by external validation and external expectations. And so it's really about creating a space for people to come back home to themselves and to solidify that relationship with themselves so that they can choose what it is that they want to do with their life, whether we're talking professionally or personally.
What made you choose this path to go down?
Because of my own journey, to be honest. Actually, I was working in the business world. I started off as a project manager, worked my way up to running a project management office in the .com world when it was the .com world, and then ended up running a law practice. But really what my journey included as well, as you mentioned, I'm the mom of five. And through that process, I started seeing my children emulate a lot of my people pleasing and perfectionist tendencies. And as they were showing me that, I was recognizing how they were holding themselves back, but all of that was learned behavior. So for me, it was that self-awareness that allowed me to go on my own personal journey of understanding where that was coming from and recognizing that I was actually holding myself back, because really what I wanted to do was, and I've wanted to do since I was 7 years old, was work with people. I just didn't know in what capacity I wanted to work with them and to talk to them. But what did that mean? And so for me, it meant take what my own experience and take what I've learned and then go get educated. So yes, many certifications, many trainings, but now be able to create this space for people to really feel seen and heard. Because at the end of the day, I believe that's what we all really want and need, is to know we matter and to be seen.
You were saying that you're an empath. How does being an empath affected you when you're dealing with other people?
That's such a great question, because I actually have to be very cognizant of my empath behaviors and how I show up, because I do take on other people's energy if I'm not careful. So I really am aware of utilizing it as a strength, meaning I really am with somebody and can understand stuff that they're not even saying. However, I'm very boundaried with how I hold myself so that I have my space and they have theirs. So I don't start taking on someone else's energy. It's also really important at the end of each day for me personally to do self-care, which isn't, bubble baths. It's just to sit quietly and to release all the things that I may have taken on. I'm very, very conscious of making sure that's part of my practice.
How do you maintain your boundaries?
It's a work in progress. However, one of the main things that I have learned is there's no wrong in saying no. That's one, as a people pleaser, that I had to learn. I also work really hard on being aware of when I go down the path of justifying or explaining. I make sure that I put a period at the end of that sentence and stop talking. And quite frankly, I use accountability partners. For instance, I believe the best coaches have coaches. So I have my own coach, but also I have a support system that holds me accountable. You know, because at the end of the day, I don't believe we can do all of it on our own. I think having people in our corner and having somebody who's going to call me out and say, hey, Kamini, did you really mean to say yes to that? Because
Yeah,
I think we do get caught up in the old pattern. You know, we can work really hard on our boundaries, but we're human beings. We're constantly evolving. So,
I think some of the things that influence people, and I don't know if it has to do with mainly women or what, but you try to please, you try to be a people pleaser, you try to take care of your children, you take care of your family, you take care of your spouse or your loved one. And it sometimes it's hard to rein in those boundaries. And you do feel kind of guilty saying no.
oh, absolutely. And that's, you know, in the work that I do, so much of it is on boundaries. And I'm very honest with people that when we set boundaries, you're absolutely right. There's a sense of guilt that we have to learn how to work through and and shift it into recognizing there will be discomfort for us. We're going to have moments of discomfort when we say no, because that's the shift away from the old pattern of people pleasing and trying to do for others. Why? Because sometimes there is a fear of rejection or a fear of abandonment or just conflict avoidance in totality.
Mhm.
It's just sitting with that discomfort though, and knowing that that no or that boundary that you're setting is actually for the benefit of not just yourself, but also this relationship that you're wanting to preserve.
I think sometimes um, if you continually say yes, sometimes I think you're not being true to your authentic self. And I think you could build up resentment, you know?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, 100%. I mean, when we think about it, over time, if we're constantly saying yes and we're not really paying attention to our own needs, or if what we're saying yes is in alignment with us, over time, that is going to absolutely build up resentment. And that's where we see the bigger conflicts happening. So while we're saying yes because we're trying to avoid conflict, it might do that for the short term, but over time, usually it means that there's going to be a deeper conflict. And usually it's a conflict within oneself.
Mhm. It could cause conflict in a relationship. Maybe that's why sometimes they'll say someone could even, it could be something very small, but a big argument will erupt over that. And maybe it's built up from all the times when you were trying to please and go along and keep the peace and all that other stuff.
Yes. A lot of times that conflict that erupts over too has nothing to actually do with what you're right. It's like, it's just, we lose our temper about something totally different.
You said you work with teens and you work with adults. What type of
Mhm.
things do you work with teens on?
So I work with teens on some of the same concepts that I'm working with adults on. A lot of it centers around how do we manage anxiety, you know, things like self-esteem, confidence, and self-acceptance. A lot of perfectionism. Our teens these days are under so much pressure. Just from when you think about the different areas where they feel pressure, whether it's socially, from their family, from school, from worrying about the future. I mean, all of that it's a great deal of pressure. So a lot of the teens that I work with and the college age students, so the emerging adults, a lot of it centers around understanding and creating that space for them to create ways of them to handle those things and know that it's not that there's something wrong with them. Because a lot of them will go into a place of shame. Like there's something wrong with me. Why does this bother me? And instead we create space for them to understand it and to work through it.
Okay. What type of things do adults worry about? I mean, I'm an adult too, but what are some of the things that they come to you with a problem with?
A lot of the adults that I have the privilege of working with are working through imposter syndrome, you know, perfectionism, the not enoughness, you know, that belief of not being enough or not worthy. They don't know that that's what it is. Really, what they're coming to me and talking about is like, I can't seem to kick this anxiety, or I'm just burnt out, or I feel like I'm stuck. I don't know where to go. Those are usually how they come to me. And really, what we understand after working together is that it's more of these underlying beliefs about self that are holding them back, or
Mhm.
the fear of conflict, right? The people pleasing, the I feel stuck is usually an avoidance of not maybe wanting to address something that they they should address, but are afraid to address because of what the consequences could mean. So a lot of the work that I do with adults, they tend to be high performing adults, just high achievers. Sometimes it's all about they feel like they always have to look at what's next. I call it nexting, which is they can't really be happy in the moment. It's all about, okay, I did that, what's next? I did that, what's next? And so it's about coming back to the present moment and really actually acknowledging who they are as an individual, as a human being, instead of constantly looking at what they're doing.
Why do they feel this way? Is it they were brought up, they had parents that made them feel you had to have impossible or near impossible standards, and they never
What I've
really.
learned, what I've learned from my work is sometimes it is family of origin, but also sometimes it's, just maybe the society that they grew up in, or just messages that they received when they were younger, and it was just internalized as this message of, I have to do more, or what I'm doing isn't good enough. So sometimes it is family of origin where we get those messages, but I would say that, I'm working with a client right now where it wasn't necessarily her parents. It was just the social group that her family engaged in. It was more from that perspective of always trying to measure up to what all the other kids were doing. And so the internalized message was, okay, yes, I may have done this really well, but that's still not enough. I've got to chase and do more. So a lot of times it's just tracking down where the origin of those stories came, and then recognize that we have the ability to change that narrative for ourselves.
One of the things you mentioned you help people work through is conscious uncoupling.
Mhm.
And it says that you're working to get certified to, I guess, help people through that. What is conscious uncoupling?
So I am actually certified. It's Catherine Woodward Thomas's work. What conscious uncoupling leans into is when a relationship ends, it's about understanding and healing yourself and recognizing what your patterns are in that conscious way so that we don't repeat those same patterns, right? Because oftentimes, especially with relationships, many people, like a relationship will end and then we kind of move on, and then we end up in another relationship and we're finding ourselves either repeating the same patterns or not necessarily, maybe we're in that toxic dynamic. We keep finding the wrong person. And so what conscious uncoupling does is takes an individual through a process of understanding the dynamics of the original relationship, understanding how you showed up in that relationship, what worked, what didn't work, and then healing through that. So when you're ready for the next relationship, you're not in the same position to repeat the same patterns.
Okay. Do you help people realize that they need to uncouple? Like they come to you, they're still wrapped up in there. I mean,
We're laughing, but you know what? I would never tell somebody they need to uncouple, but I have definitely had clients who, through the work on themselves, they've recognized that I do need to move on from this because it's a toxic dynamic. I'm thinking about a client right now who, she was in a relationship, and through the work that we were doing, she recognized where codependency had taken place and recognized that that was not healthy, and recognized that it wasn't that her partner was a bad person, but they together were not in alignment. And so then she made the decision that it would be better for them to part ways. And then of course we worked through healing through that process, right? And then for her to understand her part in that dynamic, because one person doesn't make the codependency in a relationship, right? There's both people. So it's not about shame or blame, but to understand what each person's part was in the dynamic.
explain to me, please, what is codependency? If someone's in a
Yeah.
if someone's in a relationship and it's not good for you, but you are codependent.
Yeah. Yeah. Codependency, oftentimes people relate it just to addictive or partnerships that have addiction, and that's not the case. Codependency can happen in not just romantic relationships. It happens in friendships. It can happen in the workplace. But really, when we're talking about codependency, a couple things. One, when you will notice that you constantly feel this need to take care of the other person, right? So it's all about them, and you lose track of your own identity. So if you were to think of it graphically speaking, in an interdependent relationship, each individual in that relationship is their own circle, and they overlap for just a portion of it. So that's the we in that relationship. But each person still has their own identity. They understand their needs, they understand their wants, they have their interests. In a codependent dynamic, it's almost as if both circles are one on top of the other, and you don't know where you begin and the other person ends. There's not this identity of myself. Everything becomes enmeshed with the other person that you're in that relationship with.
Mhm.
It's almost like you get caught in the need to be needed, right? And so you lose track of any of your own desires, any of your own goals. It becomes all about the other person. And that's the best way that I can explain how codependency works. And there'll be high functioning codependents who you might not see it from the outside. However, they'll notice it, because if you notice that your resentment is growing, or you feel completely underappreciated or undervalued, that's a little indication that something could be going on, where maybe you are over functioning and over giving, and you might have lost track of who you are in whatever relationship that you're looking at.
And I would think too, when it comes to making decisions, you never feel clear to say, well, I think this is what I want to do, or this is what I want to get, or this is a course of action, or whatever. You have to check with the other person first to see if, to hear what they have to say. And then maybe what they say is what you follow. Not
Yes.
what you want to do. You have to always get their approval. It's like your mind is not independent enough to think, what is it that I want to do?
Yes. Yes.
That's
Absolutely. Yes.
so.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm looking to see what questions I want to ask. We've gone through a lot of the ones that I had. Let me see. Yeah, you explained codependency and interdependency. You talked about parenting. That's one of the things that you give guidance on. How do you regain confidence as a new mother? Because I remember when I was a new mother, I was afraid of dropping the baby. I was afraid he would get sick. My mother had to show me so much, how to wash him up, how to clean out his nose, I just felt
Yes.
totally lost. So I didn't even know how to breastfeed, because
I'm right there with you. Oh my gosh.
how I
Yes.
thought I was doing wasn't the right way. So,
They handed me my first child at the hospital and said, "Here you go, feed her." And I just burst into tears, because I was like, what are you saying? I don't know what you're talking about.
mhm,
How do I do this? Oh, regaining confidence as a new mom. That's such a great question.
mhm,
One of the things that I would say first and foremost is really, before even talking about confidence, we have to talk about self-compassion.
mhm,
And really what I mean by that is what Kristen Neff refers to as kindness over judgment, and this concept of common humanity, which I'll get to in a second, and mindfulness. So kindness over judgment is really leaning into being kind to yourself instead of hypercritical, right? So just in our example of being this new mom who doesn't know how to breastfeed, the judgment is, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm such a terrible mom. This is awful. My child's going to starve to death. And kindness would say, wow, this is really tough. I've never been here before. I don't know what is happening. I don't know how to do this, right? I need to learn. That's kindness versus judging yourself.
mhm,
The second part is common humanity. And what that refers to is, I'm not alone in this. There is this idea of common humanity amongst humans. We've had similar experiences, maybe not the same experience, but similar experiences. I'm not isolated in this experience. I'm not odd or weird. Other people have had a similar experience. And then leaning on that and talking to our support system, or reaching out for guidance, recognizing that it's not bad as a new mom to ask for support.
mhm,
And then the third is just being present, right? We don't have to worry about a week from now, or even a few hours from now. Just being present with your baby and yourself is a way that it's a practice of rebuilding the confidence, because all you have to do is be present with your child in the here and now and take the next step forward. And that's how we start to build confidence, because we just have to figure out the next couple minutes. And then after that, the next couple minutes. And then it's about really celebrating each and every one of those things that we've done as a new mom, because we're so critical on what we're missing. Pay attention to what you're getting right. That's going to help rebuild your confidence.
Mhm. Don't sit there and think. I mean, here the baby is a week old, and you're thinking about, well, how do I prepare him for college?
Exactly. Exactly. Be in the here and now.
Okay. Um, what is being mindful?
Mm. I love that you're asking a question, especially just based on what we were talking about with self-compassion. Being mindful is being, again, in the present moment. So research has indicated that 47% of our day is either spent in the there or the then, meaning we're either worrying about the future and what's going to happen, or we're ruminating about something that happened in the past. Being
Mhm.
mindful says, I'm in this present moment. And I'm not saying that we don't set goals for ourselves. So please let me be clear that that's not what I'm saying at all. But if we're spending most of our energy worrying about what's going to happen in the future, we're not being in the present, and life really truly is passing you by. So being mindful is saying, I'm in the here and now, and I'm going to live in the here and now. And so mindful practices, ways that I encourage people to just practice that is, pay attention to your breath. Just sit for 1 to 2 minutes and just actually pay attention to your inhale and exhale, or pay attention to what your senses are experiencing in this moment. Just dial in and say, wow, what am I hearing right now? That's a great way of just in a very short amount of time practicing mindfulness.
The last thing I really want to ask you is about how does shame and guilt affect us?
As I said, big question to wrap this up with, but such an important one. Shame is the thing that will keep us from moving forward, because what shame says is there's something wrong with me. And it is vital for us to really go through as individuals to pay attention to when we're shaming ourselves and to do the work to unshame. Because as long as the story is there's something wrong with me, it's very difficult for you to then take this step to move yourself forward. It's really like putting a band-aid on. And so
Mhm.
shame is the thing that's going to shut us down. Guilt, they usually walk hand in hand. Guilt really refers to I've done something wrong or misaligned with my value system. And so with guilt, it's to pay attention. Is this actual guilt? Have I done something here outside of my value system that I'd like to make repair for? And then making and taking the steps to make that repair so that you can release that guilt.
Mhm.
Things like mom guilt, I will share. Oftentimes, again, that's more of the inner voice saying I should be doing something. And it's just to notice it with love and compassion. That like, oh, that's I haven't done anything wrong or misaligned with my values. That's me just recognizing that I can't be all things or in all places at all times. And I really am doing the best I can. And then again, it's a process of releasing that as well.
That's what I think. One of the things that used to hold me back, and maybe it holds others. You're always afraid you're going to do the wrong thing or you're going to make a mistake. But if you make a mistake, like you just said, you correct it and
Mm.
you go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm. Well, I want to thank Kamana. I know I just screwed up your name, but Kamana.
Kamini.
I wrote it phonetically too. Thank you for joining us today. It means
Absolutely.
a
Thank
lot
you.
that you would take time out of your day to
Thank you
come
for having me.
on my humble podcast.
I appreciate you welcoming me in.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.